To thank everyone for coming today. We did call the press in, probably about 10 local outlets. We did receive confirmation that they would be here. But Charles and I are the end result of a construct that is in place. And we have called in, we waited 8 years to call in the FBI, the National FBI, for protection. We couldn't wait until we had a new governor to watch over us, as well as Attorney Nessel, which all documents have been sent to them. We've called in the Department of Justice, we've called in ACLU, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission, Judicial Tenure Commission, and we're also calling in the Poor People's Campaign to do a full investigation into the practices of Genesee County. We were supposed to have press here today, but thank God for social media. Thank God for our local networks, because what we will not do is allow this egregious county to submerge us, to send us over, and to eradicate us from the face of the earth after all the injury that we have incurred. I'm going to take my time this morning, just because I know I am protected now. Charles, my partner, and I have waited on this day. So I'm going to say who I am. I am Lela McGee Harvey, L-E-L-A-M-C-G-E-E, hyphenated Harvey, H-A-R-V-E-Y. To the left of me is my partner, Charles Young Jr., C-H-A-R-L-E-S-Y-O-U-N-G, Jr., and we are the founders of Operation Unification, a nonprofit that is dedicated to changing lives and building homes in our community. Charles and I created Operation Unification in 2004. And after the housing collapse, the housing collapse of the country, we decided that we wanted to make a difference in our community. We decided against many of the people who wanted to do apartment buildings and stack us in apartment buildings. We understood the history of the county and the city. And so we said we would put disadvantaged white families and African American families and give them an opportunity at home ownership, because we understood apartments would make us into generational renters, and we had fought since 1968 with the fair housing to have the right to have a home and to live wherever we chose. When we began to build, we were approached because we were the first African American Choto in the city of Flint in 2009, and the first African American Choto in the county of Genesee. And we were able, at that particular time, to solicit grants, large grants, to develop our community. To the right of me is Mr. Gregory Eason, who served as the city administrator in contacting us through Sheldon Miller to do the NSP1, which is the Neighborhood Stabilization Project along the DuPont corridor, as well as to do NSP2, which was Smith Village. What was critical about those initiatives is that they were reimbursable. It was not the old way that HUD did. You put your money in and your money was given back to you after it was inspected and verified that the work had been done. So all of the properties were in our name. What we didn't know until deposition started, because we ended up in a court case, is that Mr. Eason was in contention with my foundation for whatever reason. There is testimonies, and it has all been uploaded to all of the people that we have already named, of arguments that the Charles Young Jr. group should not touch Smith Village. We cannot develop Smith Village. Mr. Eason did not want us to be a developer. What Mr. Eason said is what every community, good community, should say, is that project should be developed, and the contractors there should be indicative of the people that live in that community. He didn't say he wanted it to be a white or a black project development. He wanted it to be a project where African Americans were given the opportunity to work. So we were asked to be a contractor. We were never asked to be a developer in Smith Village. And so, after wrangling with the Mott Foundation, which he has the depositions for, and an affidavit that is certified, and the feds have it now, they told him that we would not be there. Mr. Eason told them to stay where they are and do their business down there, and he will run City Hall. We developed NSP-1 along DuPont and NSP-2. We never received a citation on either project, period whatsoever. Because the beauty about that is that HUD sent in consultant firms. Because the city of Flint had been so egregious prior to our arrival and Mr. Eason's arrival. They had been sanctioned by OIG and HUD. And they could not work unless you had the wherewithal to do reimbursable contracts. That's why we were contacted, because we were financially stable and able to do that. We began that project, and by the grace of God, we were able to complete the project by the end of December 2011. What was critical to that, because I want to do away with all of the rumors that are out there. One thing about rumors and untruths is that when the truth shows up, it's all dispelled. And so when we made the mark in December of 2011, HUD came in and gave us an A. You could look in the Flint Journal archives, it is there. Said the work was great. NSP-1. But then our great governor created a lethal weapon, Public Act 436. And he sent in local emergency managers. The whole nation believes our emergency managers came from somewhere else. They are local emergency managers that had 60, 70 years of history here. And the first thing they did when they came into City Hall was they took Mr. Eason and terminated him. And the very next thing they did was they came after Charles and I on NSP 1 and 2. Again, what was interesting about NSP 1 and 2 is that they were reimbursable. So we were always waiting on to be reimbursed. Those contracts were seized for almost a year. Almost a year. Without payment, without communication, absolutely nothing. One of the beautiful things is that Mr. A.C. Dumas called in the Department of Justice, but it was a community Department of Justice. It was not the Department of Justice that Charles and I had called in. And they only had the power to mediate. Mr. Gregory Eason was there, it was me, it was Bernard Lawler, Charles Young, and it was Ed Kurtz and Mike Brown, who sat directly across from us. And Charles said, what I want to know is why would you take Smith Village from us? Ed Kurtz and Mike Brown looked us in the face, the witnesses were there, and said, we personally have nothing against you two. We were told to kill it. We would work with you again. What was interesting about Smith Village is the rumors that were put out there that the work was done inferior. What was not told about Smith Village is that when the emergency managers came in, they left it without security, the security that we used to pay for to make sure it was not vandalized. Everything was taken out of it. The city was responsible for the infrastructure, not Charles and I. There was never any infrastructure in place. The basements flooded. There was no electricity, but all of that was hidden. Now, what was interesting is this is an official document. Ed Kurtz and Mike Brown signed. They sent this document to Governor Snyder stating that the homes that were repaired were excellent and ready to sell by February 10th of 2012. But they told our community, and we bought into it, that we did inferior work. But I just want to take my time to show you what a construct is. And that somebody in this city put a bounty not on Operation Unification, but on Charles Young and Lela McGee Harvey. And so, because the contracts were reimbursable and they were in our name, the smart emergency managers decided that we would just take the properties. And it was only after that they realized they had to take us to court to take the properties. And so on the quarter of NSP 1, DuPont, they filed in Chief Judge Richard Ewell's courtroom a lawsuit against us, stating that we did inferior work and we had breached the contract. I know this gets a little long, but I want to bring you to why we're here today. Saying that we breached the contract. Under testimony, there is a CD where our attorneys had Mike Brown, the emergency manager, admit under oath that he misled the court and he was not aware that money was owed to us. There is a CD of testimony where the director, Tracy Atkinson, misled the court by admitting she breached the contract by not paying us in almost 8 months, causing financial destruction everywhere. So when they took us to court, Charles and I are think tanks. We are sagages. We countersued the city, something that normally happens because when you do a contract, there's an arbitration process that takes place. So we countersued the city, and that caused a problem for them. But it was okay for us because when we entered Genesee County's circuit court, we knew Lady Justice was there. And she is always blindfolded. Always blindfolded. She does not see color. She does not operate on the axis of friendship. She is blindfolded, and the only thing that she weighs is evidence. So when we entered the courtroom, we thought we were safe. We thought we were safe. And the reason why we called this press conference today was to talk about the whistleblower protection pro se that Charles and I had to write in federal court to go around and circumvent this egregious county in circuit court to find relief from the federal courts because of the egregious behavior of Chief Judge Ewell and the county circuit court. When we filed that pro se, I've had to take 4 months off. Charles had to take 4 months off to sit to do the research, to understand, to become attorneys. Because the detriment to any chief judge, which he knows, is when you leave someone in a court system for 6 years, you lose your counsel. You are in a status of pending litigation. You cannot work. When we come to you with motions for you to relieve us and for you to hear us, you ignore us. And debt is mounting, and it's mounting, and it's mounting. And we're saying, why won't you hear us? The Constitution states that every citizen has a right to trial, a right for your case to be preserved, a right in this county and in this state to rectify any income issues or financial issues you have. The state is supposed to execute a quick remedy for that. We were an entity when we entered the circuit court. What is it about Charles and I that the entire county, the highest ranking officials in that entire county, have come after us? I have never sneezed on Bill White. We've never seen him. Never did anything to the emergency managers. Don't know them. Don't know Chief Judge Ewell from anybody. What is it about Charles and I that you have come against us, and that you have used the court system as a prison to keep us locked in, so that liability continues to continue. I want you to hear how egregious this is. How can you tax me but not give me a right as a citizen in your court? I want the federal courts to hear our case. I want the federal courts to tell us, I want a fair jury to tell us that we owe a county who would not give me a right to collect my money or child's, who would not give us a right to trial, who would not let me out the court system to work, that I owe you anything. This is the corruption. And when we called this press conference, it was confirmed that we would have many news outlets, but I knew when they didn't show up, the same force that came against me and Charles came against them. But it's going to go on because we're not going anywhere. And this is why we had to call in the National FBI. We had to call on Attorney Nessel for protection, the Department of Justice, because the Genesee County, when you pull her back, she is defiled and desecrated. She is ugly underneath. And it is hidden. And we live in a county that has been bullied by a covenant that is in place, where you can't speak out, where there is no First Amendment, where you can't tell what is going on. And to close us out this day, the press didn't show up. Had it not have been against the stakeholders, they would have been here.
That's right.
I could have said we were having cheese and they would have been here. But it goes on. We're not going anywhere. We are the testimony. We are the residue. We are the truth of what goes in Genesee County. Chief Judge Ewell couldn't get around it. And we knew you cannot sue a judge. There is God and then there's a judge. But what we did know was those who sat in the county, even our politicians, who knew what was being done to us. You aided and you abetted in the destruction of our company and our personal lives. And had not we went and been sagacious enough to write our own Prozac and go around to federal court, we would not be here telling this story. I want you to hear how egregious this court system is. It is 2019. We have not had a trial date. 2018, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. We have not had a trial date. And if we enter a court, especially the chief judge, it means the judge that has been elected to chief has an expertise that no one else has. He is the administrator. He moves all cases quickly through the court system. Check the records. We put motions in and we call. And you ignored us, and not only us, our counsel. But we had a counsel who said, when we entered the court, if you rule wrong, I will appeal you. Because if Charles and I did not have the evidence, why wouldn't you just let us go in 2013? It was simple. But the evidence was overwhelming of what the emergency managers did when they came in. It was overwhelming. But it's bigger than that. Because what is it about us that Bill White wanted to argue with Gregory Eason when we had not even touched Smith Village? What is it about us? Mike Brown and Ed Kirk says, I don't have anything against you, but I was told to kill it. What is it about starving us out financially that we are no longer the first African American Choto in Genesee County or the city? What is it about a chief judge that would treat us worse than the emergency managers? And you are angered now that we were intelligent enough to maneuver around you. We're not going anywhere. We're not standing down. We have a right to work in this community without incident, without intimidation, without fear. That is our right. We did not go out and solicit the mundane, average people that you guys probably are looking for. They are all broken. There is no First Amendment here. There is a construct in Genesee County where they break people if you don't acquiesce. When you pull Genesee County back, when you pull her back, and that's why we want the Department of Justice here. She is ugly underneath. She is defiled. And you think because you didn't bring the press that we were not going to move ahead. You think we were not going to get our message out. You own Genesee County, but you don't own the federal courts. You don't own the Department of Justice. You don't own Attorney Nessel. You do not own Governor Wood. You own only the Genesee County, and here everybody is petrified. We got tired of being tired. It's a sick day in Genesee County. Sick. And how dare the news not show up? When we were poisoned, you didn't show up. It was a blackout, just like it is today. To cover up. What is it about Genesee County that she is so foul? You signed a carry gun to water deal. You poisoned babies. You covered the numbers of the blood levels, the numbers of the Legionella. You are trying to cover up child. Why are you so wicked? What are you fearful of? Independent thinkers? People who don't acquiesce? Do you know that if you had sat down with Charles and I, you would find out we had more in common with you than not? Because we wanted to make sure that violence was eradicated. We wanted to make sure people were not homeless. We wanted to make sure that there were employment opportunities. But we didn't do it at the disadvantage of poor people. We wanted all people to move forward. And if anybody had to be sacrificed, it would be everybody, not some people. The difference between me and Charles is that we didn't want one side of Flint developed. We wanted all of Flint developed. We wanted the little boy named Jamal to walk out in his own community and there's a library there. He doesn't have to go downtown for everything. What is it about Charles and I that you don't like? Is it our master plan works for all people? Because we have never, ever stepped on your shoe. We've never done anything to you. And even when we wrote this pro se, I told Charles they would come because we put all the facts and the proof there. They would come and they would apologize. But I lied. I didn't know what I was talking about. Because they took your tax dollars and went and hired the largest firm they could to come after us. And he and I have been writing pro ses and arguments in federal court to stay there. And they thought they could dismiss us by saying we didn't have any standing, only to find out we do have standing. And we brought in DOG, Civil Commission, because we didn't want to be presumptuous in assuming that it was race. We're not that pompous. We want them to come in here and undo Genesee County, to tell the truth about Genesee County. So when you told people that we didn't pay our liabilities, you lied. You didn't tell them that you prohibit us from being citizens, from collecting what was due to us. You lied. And that's what we do, is you create rumors. You wanted to wordsmith us. You wanted to create your image of who we were, which was based and predicated on a lie. And my community, many of you who have come up the same mountain, Charles, you fell into it and bought into it. Many of you who hold high seats in our community, you have never come to ask us what is going on with our case because you knew already what they were doing and you could not speak out. You feared the 8 years that Charles and I have been here, tormented. There's an old African adage that says when we cross the river together, the alligators cannot eat us. But our community left me and Charles to cross the river alone. And everybody is shocked that we are there. And we're not there because we're pompous. We're there because God is sick of you, county. That's why everything you've done, you've gotten caught in. He's sick of you. And it is time for you to tear this construct down. But what I will say to you, that we have a new governor here. And we have a new attorney general that we've already notified. And we've already notified the FBI. We had to notify 8 agencies and get them on our side before we could stand here and have a press conference. That's how wicked you are. We're not going anywhere. You are going to make right what you've done. But not only that, you need to be torn down. And I want to say this to the community. There are only 2 types of individuals in the county. You either benefit from what they do, or you totally disagree. There's a rumor, just a rumor, that there were some attorneys who was interested in our property. That's why we were held in the courts. To say we don't pay our liability, not to give me what was on. When I entered the court and Charles entered the court, I had enough to pay everybody's liability in this room. Why have you not released it to us? There is no reason a judge, a chief judge can come up with to hold us in a court since 2013, and to this day I don't have a trial date. There is no excuse because there's always a transfer. Let me show you the work that Charles and I had to do. This is a list of companies that would move through his court. Not another judge, Judge Yule's court. In 2 years flat, entities, because he understood if you keep an entity there, the ramifications is they won't last. You cannot keep an entity in a court system for 6 years. Why did you move them and not us? The federal courts have it. DOJ has it. The FBI has it. It has all the players. Because somebody put a bounty on me and Charles. And now it is your hope that we will go away. But let me tell you something, county, in closing. Because my community know me. They know Charles. On our worst day, when you had your foot on our neck, when we couldn't breathe, when we couldn't eat, when we didn't go anywhere, ask our community, did we not continue to serve them? Because what we do is not a job. It is who we are. To serve others and to make a difference. And it only takes sometimes 2 people to change the whole dichotomy of this place. But your fear has to become your courage. You are powerless. You are broken. You are like the county of Genesee. And we are the testimony that she is foul. She is not great. She is not for all people. And if you don't acquiesce to her, she will destroy you. I want to say to the local news outlets, that would have worked if social media had not been here. We are not standing here because he and I are the most and the strongest individuals in the world. I know some of you sitting in your high power don't believe it, but God is here. And he's sick of your wickedness. That's why in everything that you do, it's being torn down and it's being exposed. I want Genesee County to say that we're not real, that it doesn't go on, that we're not the testimony. It is real. And here's what I want to do. I want to say in closing. Charles and I have had so many conversations. And the reason we really did this pro se and push forward, because we wanted to quit it. 8 years of being passed around, we wanted to quit. But how dare we leave this mess for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and those who are to come. If I got to leave this earth, he and I both decided it would be that some child 100 years from today would say, Charles and Lela made a difference in my life. Genesee County, we're not stepping down. The federal courts have the evidence, more than overwhelming, and you have it too. And you could have come to us to make right the egregious nature of the judge, but you decided to protect him. You decided to protect his court system because we told you you have done in excess of $45 million worth of damage to us that we can prove. And so when we wrote our pro se, we had to ask the courts for protection. Full physical and verbal protection, not to be intimidated by the county we were born in. We had to ask for our existing case to be preserved and move to an equitable jurisdiction, another county. We had to ask for our right to come back and to sue be preserved. All of the documents be preserved because we're dealing with a wicked county who will do anything to make us go away. So I want to say to my community, when we ignore evil, injustice, and biases, you are accomplice to it. And when you become an accomplice to injustices and biases, then intentionally or inadvertently, you destroy all of those who are to come. I want my community to know that the bones of our ancestors are not resting there. They are withering right now. All of the work that has been done, and we are going backwards because you have people in high positions who are cowards, who don't want to sit at the table with people. How can you not sit Charles and I at the table when we have been poor, we have been unemployed, we have been all of those things that you're trying to fix? It is psychotic not to sit us at the table. Because you have to wonder, in my research that I've done, is that do you really want to fix the problem of poverty? Or do you want to contain it? Because poverty is big business in Genesee County. So do we really want it to go away? And was Charles in the way of your master plan? We owe it, those of us who are divinely guided, we owe it to the children who have not been born yet to stand up, to pave a way, to to make a difference. And we have to come out of our foolishness of being identified, of needing validation, and destroying anything we put in place before we get it off the ground. The reason why Charles and I have survived is because we had to work alone. Because our egos are in our way. And when we approach work, and when we approach an initiative that we have to push forward to make a difference in the future, we make it about us. It's not about us. It's about the work that needs to be done to push us as a community forward. I want to say to the Genesee County, you bring shame on white people and black people for your egregious behavior. And we're not going away. We're going to meet you in federal court. Not just because there is a case out there about money, but because we want our community to know who you are. The County of Genesee needs to take lessons on morals because she is egregious. And when you peel her back, she is ugly. Thank you guys for listening.